Conversations across time. Conversations across time. Conversations across time. Conversations across time.
Hi, I'm not Charlie Chaplin. I'm Mark Hoffman, proud member of the Conversations Across Time team, but I do play Charlie Chaplin on tonight's show. On the panel along with me are Paul Robeson, African-American entertainer, artist, activist, All-American football player, and Roy Cohn, the attorney for Joseph McCarthy during the anti-communist witch hunts during the 1950s. Tonight's show is The Stain of Treason and The Smell of Treason, talking about the Trump administration and the people in that administration that may be committing treasonous acts.
Please lay it out for us.
These people, Trump's boys, what we can call them that,
Yes.
or the duck pond, or the swamp, whatever you want to call them, they colluded with Russia, who is the enemy of the United States. They followed Putin's foreign policy to a hilt. Putin couldn't have done it any better himself. They sided with ISIS in certain instances by backing economic deals that enabled ISIS to fund itself. Excuse me, they represented a foreign government at the expense of the United States. And I'm asking Mr. Cohn if that is less detrimental, less treasonous than simply, as Ms. Joseph said, going to a discussion group discussing the merits of a communist state or a socialist state or being a member of the Communist Party. It's very simple.
Look,
Now, what's
it's
your-
just, hey, the guy's just making a few dollars under the free enterprise system, which built this country and rules this country, and these idiots babbling at a tea party. I mean, they just have these crazy ideas that pass on to the public that the public don't need to know about.
So I'm going to put it as succinctly as I can. You're saying that the mere belief in something is more dangerous than what these people are actually doing, because the people you persecuted only exercised free speech and they had a certain belief, perhaps. These people actually have done things. It's
Actions.
not actions. So you're saying that
Got the
my
Republican
speech, even though you
platform
couldn't do
changed.
anything to me because I wasn't an American citizen other than not let me back in the country, but persecuting Mr. Robeson, who's probably still being
held up at
held
the
up by your
airport.
boy Trump at the airport,
Let him stay there.
or Homeland Security, that the mere exercise of our rights to free speech was more dangerous to the security of the United States than the actual actions of your buddy Donald Trump's cohorts.
I'm not going there.
I think
No,
this is
but hold on.
Right.
What's your answer? See, the way that
I
was
already
phrased-
answered. I'm
no,
not answering.
No, there's a yes or no. So are you saying that the actions of artists like Mr. Chaplin and Mr. Robeson, and he already described what those actions are, they're actions of an artist. Are you saying that their actions are more detrimental to the safety and security of the United States of America than the actions of Paul Manafort, of Barack al-Barak, of what's his
Recep Aragon, Steve Miller,
Steve Bannon, all of these people,
Michael Flynn,
all of these people. You saying
Carter
that
Page.
the actions
Page.
of Mr. Chaplin and Mr. Robeson are more dangerous to the United States than the actions of all of these men that we've just named?
Short answer, yes.
you know what? I
Because
agree.
Thank you.
because that is the America
Thank you.
I represent.
Good evening. Welcome once again to Conversations Across Time. I'm very pleased that our panel has consented to come back for a third time. My co-host, Babette Josephs, who's always here, seated to my left.
My pleasure.
Welcome, Babby. And seated next, actually opposite Babette, is Mr. Roy Cohn. Mr. Roy Cohn is an attorney who was the architect of the Rosenberg trial. He was also the attorney, the lead counsel for Senator Joe McCarthy during the 50s when we had the Red Scare. And Mr. Cohn interestingly enough, was also Donald Trump's attorney.
He never goes away.
Seated
And I
next
never-
to
You will.
Seated next to Mr. Cohn is the artist, seminal character, seminal person from the entertainment industry who not only, I mean, we talk about him as being a comedian, we talk about him as being a producer, and sometimes we don't even refer to the fact that he was a very talented musician. So I welcome you, Mr. Charles Chaplin. Thank you. Now, in this series, as you know, if you've been watching the show, this is the third in a series of The Smell of Treason, The Stain of Treason. And we are now at the point, we've been asking Mr. Cohn about his protege, now President Donald Trump. And we want to jump into a discussion about NATO. NATO, for the purpose of our audience, knows what NATO is, but it's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
NATO, and let's talk about NATO very briefly. NATO was established to stop the Russian aggression throughout Europe.
And Mark, I'm going to ask if we're going to put up that chart that shows the 12 original members of NATO, which was created in 1949.
Correct, and they were the original members of NATO, and NATO means North Atlantic Treaty Organization. These were countries in Europe. There was, the United States and Canada, but mostly these were European countries that wanted to stop Russian aggression throughout Europe. And then later on, and we'll put up another chart, there were some additions to NATO because Russia was trying to make, or I should say the Soviet Union at the time, they weren't called Russia, was trying to make some incursions into Greece and Turkey. And that follows right in the Russian history to control the warm water ports, Turkey's the Dardanelles.
Yes.
And President Truman came up with the Truman Doctrine, which was to stop any type of communist aggression in that area. And that's when we added some more countries to NATO to stop the movement into Turkey and Greece and some of those other areas. And we'll put up that chart as well.
Now, Matt, can I just jump in for 1 second? What's particularly interesting, I know when you're talking about the formation of NATO and those countries being added, in 1955, something significant happened. In 1955, West Germany became a part of NATO.
Right.
And that led to the Warsaw Pact.
As a way to get Western cultures to band together to try to align themselves for the security of the world after the terrible things that had happened during World War II and immediately thereafter. So we do know that your protege, Mr. Trump, who seems to be very influenced by President Vladimir Putin, is someone who seems to be interested in destroying NATO. So I want to just throw it out to you because Secretary of State Rex Tillerson,
Who never worked for anybody in government and knows absolutely nothing about anything except how to make money for himself.
That's a bad thing.
but he's from the oil industry.
Exxon.
CEO of Exxon.
ExxonMobil.
Yes.
Yes,
Exxon.
former CEO of ExxonMobil. But the point that we're trying to get to is that we know that ExxonMobil orchestrated a deal with Russia. And the deal was that for 63 million acres, ExxonMobil would team with the Russian oil interests, and they would exploit to produce oil. So we have the Secretary of State, a former oil man, who has an interest in acreage in Russia for business purposes. And we also know that the sanctions that were put in place before President Obama left office would stop any of this exploration and any exploitation of that business interest. So I want us to talk, if we can, for a little bit about where that leaves us. What happens if there's no longer a NATO?
Hey, that's not my problem. I trust Donnie. I mean, be honest.
Boy, are you a
He's
fool.
always been an America First guy. I mean,
Everybody who trusts Donnie is suing him now. Join the crowd.
But soon for what? I mean, he cooks business deals. I mean,
But to your point, what is you as a person who was, you made your bones, your whole history had to do with terrorizing people for interests with Russia, for being communists. You were a part of the Red Scare. You were Joe McCarthy's
You
henchman.
made
Well,
the Red
well, it's not
Square
communist
scare.
anymore, so it's not a threat to us.
But
Wait.
the-
Who's not a communist anymore? Putin?
No, I mean, look,
He's a capitalist, so it's okay.
yeah, absolutely.
But the thing is that
I see.
probably Tillerson is loved by Putin. Didn't he give him a medal?
He gave him an award. He gave him the highest civilian award, the highest award that can be given to a civilian, the highest Russian award. And I think it's Friend of Russia. And actually on your screen, you will see a photograph of him wearing that medal in an interaction
So?
with Vladimir
Doesn't
Putin.
that
Sitting next to
give you
Comrade
pause
Nichols.
that he's going to do the bidding, even though he's
What
the
bidding?
American secretary?
He's
the
got
bidding of Putin
63 million acres.
in the Crimea, in the
Siberia?
Ukraine, and the fact is, what would you have said, Rapid Roy, if
He's a
Joseph
business
Stalin had given George Marshall, who
63 million acres.
No, no, the Medal of Friendship.
who
Medal of
also
Friendship.
was allied with Stalin to defeat Nazi Germany, the Medal of Friendship after World War, the Medal of Friendship after World War
Another
II.
liberal.
What would you have said about George Marshall?
I mean, his time was treason. I mean, they're all traitors.
So Marshall would be a traitor,
Uh-huh,
but Tillerson's perfectly
He's a,
okay.
he's
He's
a
a business guy.
businessman. Right.
He's a know a guy.
I want to ask this question then. Let's
Tillerson
bring
was
it up
just
to
trying to
date.
cut a business deal.
So if Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, had been awarded the Friendship Medal from Vladimir Putin, how would you feel about that?
We would have smeared the shit out of that bitch.
But she's Secretary of State, and Tillerson is now Secretary of State. She was former Secretary. Yes, she ran and she was the losing candidate. She didn't lose, but
She won, but
she
she's
won,
not
but
president.
she didn't win.
Well, she's out and but Donnie's in. Do
Yes.
the math.
Okay. But I still want to get back to the point. How would you categorize her relationship, if such a relationship existed between Hillary Clinton and the state of Russia? How would you view that? Because you seem to not have a problem with the fact that the present Secretary of State has received the highest medal that can be awarded to a civilian by the president of Russia. I'm just trying to follow your reasoning here.
It's called capitalism. Tillerson's an oil guy. He cuts business deals. Donnie cuts business deals. That's what it's all about. I mean, don't worry. We're gonna, as a nation, we're gonna benefit. You're not, but the people I represent
wait,
In the
will.
national interest of the United States, right? NATO has always been the bulwark against the expansion of the country you hated, Soviet Russia, and any other Eastern incursion into Western Europe. That's been the bulwark. Donald Trump and Tillerson, their policy is to break up NATO, which is either A or A1 on Putin's list of what he would like to accomplish
break up.
vis-a-vis the West.
Maybe we don't
Now,
need
how
NATO
can
anymore.
you justify that in terms of American security? I mean, I speak of this as a person who lived in the United States, but I'm a British citizen. However, to me, your security is to defend yourself against your enemies. This is breaking apart everything, and then the countries of Europe will be weakened. That's why.
Mike, hey,
That's
that's not
why
our concern.
Putin and your boy Trump support those right-wing dictators or
Oh, my
the
goodness,
right-wing parties. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say dictators yet because they haven't gotten the power
Not
in
yet.
France and in Germany.
And Holland.
Well,
and
Holland,
the
I think
Netherlands.
he's going to lose or he lost.
He lost.
Yes,
But that doesn't mean he wasn't supported by the
and
same
Putin
cast of
supports them, and
characters.
so therefore, if Putin backs them, and your boy Ducky backs Putin,
Yes.
Ducky's backing them. How do you justify that?
I don't have to.
How do you justify
Well, no, you're
the fact-
supposed to be a patriot. Your whole shtick,
you
and I use
justify
that
the
word
fact-
shtick from an entertainment point of view.
Yes.
Your entire shtick was the security of the United States
Against
and
communists.
communism under Marx is, overthrow the system. So therefore, communists were traitors, and therefore, of course, they advocated overthrowing the stable system. And you went after us with the vengeance of a pit bull, and yet you
there's nothing
justify
wrong with
this.
pit bulls.
He
Oh,
justifies
I'm sorry,
it.
I don't.
You-
Yeah,
you-
right.
Trying to-
He's an insult to pit bulls. I
You-
understand
you-
that.
you-
I'm sorry. I apologize.
But you as an artist, and Mr. Robeson as an artist, who unfortunately still being held up at the airport.
might
I
be
want
in
our
jail
audience to
for all
that
we know
He
now.
might be in jail by now.
Yeah, he might be in jail.
because
As
he
you
wasn't
might
able to
end
be
up.
here. He wasn't able to be here for the earlier when
And only
we taped
because
last
of his
week.
political leanings.
Yes.
He never did anything.
Well,
So how do you justify? How
Chris
do
didn't
you
do anything.
justify what what your protege Donald Trump and all of the people that he has empowered? How do you justify what they're doing? Because your whole shtick, as Mr. Chaplin has said, was the protection and the safety and security of the United
From
States of America.
communism, from Russians,
Yeah.
from
Like
the
I say,
Soviets.
have you forgotten, Russia's not communist anymore. The whole Stalin system's over.
So now that
And
they're
now it's
So it doesn't
a
matter.
free enterprise.
So therefore, Roy, it doesn't matter that the country's threatened. It matters from what direction they're threatened.
it matters
If they're
what
threatened from the
economic
left,
system
you
the
get all
threateners-
upset. If they're threatened from the right, it's perfectly okay.
And it's perfectly
Hey, I
all
don't
right
feel threatened by the right because
don't?
we're in charge.
because
they're in
you're part
charge
of the
and they're gonna
right.
stay
We
in
understand
charge.
that.
So therefore, you're saying there's no threat from Putin.
And doesn't
Nope.
bother you at all that the Secretary of State will be the beneficiary of billions and millions of dollars if we lift our sanctions and the Russians can start to drill for his oil.
Hey.
That's fine with you.
Free enterprise, sweetheart, that's how it works.
No, that's not free enterprise.
And I'm not your
Actually, that's
sweetheart.
dictatorial capitalism.
Yes,
It's
it
called
is.
an oligarchy,
Yes.
I think.
We got one here
And
in
we
Russia,
try
in
not
America.
to-
We got one here they got one there in Russia.
They certainly
Oligarchs
have
don't
one in
take
Russia.
shit from nobody.
Well, I can say this.
They got one in
What?
Turkey.
That-
They got one in North Korea. Those are the kind of countries we want to emulate. You emulate them. I would rather not.
But here's the thing: until we are able to alert the American people who
They don't give a
don't
crap.
know, like you've said before, you said it last week, you said it the week before that, and it is worth repeating because I want the audience to hear this. Mr. Cohn and all of his proteges believe that you don't care. It's important that
Well,
you
they don't
understand
care.
that
They just
you
wanna
don't
see
care.
the
This country
reality show with
exists.
big tits.
This country exists.
And you're too stupid
for-
to understand that you should
This country
care.
exists.
Precisely.
This country exists for the exploitation of people like yourself, people like Mr. Trump, who care nothing about this country other than how much money and power they can grab for themselves. It's important that the audience understand that. See, that's why, as we say here, Conversations Across Time, we're not trying to tell you what to think. We want to make sure you are thinking. And what Mr. Cohn and his people are banking on is that you're not thinking. So now I want to go back to...
Thinking's not for everyone, folks. Just stay there and watch your reality shows with the big tits and leave the administration of the government to Donnie and me. Okay?
Roy,
For some reason, this information just doesn't seem to be sexy enough. That for some reason, the American people are not paying attention to what Mr. Cohn is saying. And you know what? We got to give him credit. He's
But-
here. He's
but-
he's saying it.
But it's really funny because I remember in 49 and 50 that Joe McCarthy and Rapid Roy over here were always accusing George Marshall,
Yes.
later on Eisenhower, of being communist agents or being
Communism,
too
right.
friendly to the
Eisenhower, I
communists
remember that.
because of certain policies that they advocated in terms of trying to work out some détente in Europe, that they were accused by you of being communist and a threat to the security of the United States. And in fact, some of your ilk even accused, I remember President Eisenhower, who was a military man and who was a Republican, people like the John
Yes.
Birch Society accused him of being treasurous. So
Said
how
he
do
was
you...
a dangerous liberal.
Right, how do you justify that in terms of your criticism then and that it's okay for Tillerson to not even represent the country, but to represent the interests of Exxon Oil in foreign policy? So when he makes a decision, it's based on what benefits the shareholders of
Well, how about
Exxon
his
Oil.
decision not to go to the NATO summit?
Exactly.
Now he's changed,
He's
but that's because
he's only changed because of pressure.
That's right.
But he was more interested in visiting with his boy Putin in Russia again than going to the summit
going to the
meeting.
summit.
And fortunately, there was enough pressure, media pressure, to get him to change his mind.
Well,
yes.
he's there to make money for himself, so of course he's not
Well,
interested
Exxon
in
and
NATO.
he are tied together. So when Exxon makes money, his stocks go up. He makes money.
So
and
that's
all
why
his-
he's interested in that 60 million
Right.
acres in
Right,
Russia,
exactly.
because he wants drilling to happen there in order to fill his own pockets. Now,
Hey, you see an
I don't know how
opportunity?
you think.
To me,
I
that's
do know
to
how
me
you
that's
think.
treasonous.
But
And
I'm
that's
not
exactly-
interested.
Treason.
I am
Making
not
money is treason.
interested
Because-
in making Tillerson
No, it's not making money
richer.
because that oil won't be used to help the United States. It'll be helped to use the adversaries in the United States.
exactly right.
So that's by
You think that
definition.
money might be going somehow, some of it to ISIS? Wouldn't surprise me.
Well,
so
no,
that's
here's-
what
I-
You
I'm
don't
saying.
know that. You don't know that.
Here's
You
the
don't know
thing.
that.
We talked about
It's
this.
an alternative fact.
Well, we talked about this last week. We talked about the fact that there is no question that there is business being done on Michael Flynn, who was the NSA and would have still been in place had there not been an outcry from the public and had he not lied
No,
to
if
Pence.
he hadn't lied to Pence, I think
and that
Pence
wasn't
just
to me,
couldn't stand it.
But here's the point.
He embarrassed
lying,
Pence.
His lying to Pence was a very small thing on the scales of the fact that the oil, that is, when the ISIS terrorists conquer territory, they have to have a way to market the product that they have seized. That's oil. And that oil is something that the president of Turkey and his son-in-law are marketing. So we are ostensibly fighting the spread of ISIS, and at the same time, we are allowing the possibility of them making money from the oil that's been captured by ISIS. So we're giving in one hand and taking from the other. I mean, it makes no
We're
sense.
giving much more than we're taking.
you don't-
And
hey, you
the
don't know that.
taking part involves killing
Innocent
our
citizens.
people who are in the military. The military, there are people, there are Gold Star families every place who have lost their sons and daughters in order to make Roy Tillerson rich. And that sucks. And I won't put up with it.
It's criminal and
I
it might
will
be
not
treasonous.
put up with it.
And
I'm
Might
a
as well, because
citizen.
it's the way it is.
The-
I'm a
That's-
citizen of the
smell
United
of
States
treason.
of
Well,
America.
that's-
I will
smell
not
of
put up
treason
with it.
It's
The
definitely
smell of
criminal
treason.
and it smells of treason.
Smell of treason. That's exactly, and how it is that we are allowing it to happen. And Mr. Cohn, I keep saying, I appreciate you being honest with us, because we here at Conversations Across Time take the fact that we have microphones and that we can address these issues, we take it very seriously, and we try very much to get this information out to the public,
We
to the
want
people,
people
that
to
we
know.
want people to know. They don't have to agree with us, but they at least have to know what people like you and your proteges are up to.
Like they care.
But
You have to understand, they don't give a crap.
How many people came to the airports across the country when the first travel ban was instituted? Hundreds of thousands of people on
so to say the citizenry
3 or
doesn't
4
care,
hours notice in every major city in this country. I went, there were 5,000, maybe 10,000
How much
people.
do stores pay you? I mean,
at
that's how it
Philadelphia.
is. They pay-
Not enough. Nothing. I got paid nothing. It's a shame, isn't it? Now, there were 10,000 people there. I walked around looking for the guy who was giving out the checks. I looked every place. I looked under manhole covers. I looked behind people's backs. I looked down shirts. I couldn't find any man giving out money.
It really boggles my mind, Roy.
I looked.
That you would be upset even if they did get paid to demonstrate, which they didn't by Mr. Soros. So even if George Soros gave Ms. Joseph a check for $50 to protest, how does that compare?
Hey, I'm a
$10 million.
capitalist too. I deserve
Right, that's
50
right,
bucks.
of course.
Actually, I
Of
deserve
course.
300
Of
bucks.
course.
But $10
It
million
was cold down there.
$10 million
But what
annually
Roy would
to
say,
Paul
you're not a
Manafort.
good enough capitalist because you're not getting enough money.
Yeah. And
And
we
I
don't
had
want
to
to
stand
lose,
on my feet the whole time.
and we don't want to lose sight of the $10 million was paid annually to Paul Manafort to advance the interests of Vladimir Putin in the United States. And you know something? I don't know if and I don't expect that
And if
you'll
you-
agree with me, but I want to say this. Guess what? He influenced the election in the United States of America, and you know what? Paul Manafort is brilliant. He truly
agree.
is. He's
He's
an
making a
evil
mint out of
genius.
it.
He's an evil genius because that $10 million that was spent, that annual stipend of $10 million that was paid to his company, they got their money's worth because they have a president sitting
and it
at
re-
1600 Pennsylvania Avenue who has no damn business being
And
there.
it remains to be seen based on what
And there's no idea what's going on.
Yes.
what our Secretary of State starts to do, how much benefit that's going to be the same
accrue
type
to
of thing.
him,
We don't
yes.
know yet. We haven't seen, but we suspect
Well,
something.
we know he got the platform changed for the Republican Party
Right.
To
to
lift the
agree
sanctions.
that
Right.
the sanctions should come off Russia.
Right, and if he could
for
get
what they
that,
did
it's
in
a
the
big profit for
Ukraine.
it's a big profit for Exxon
And
and
if he
him.
can get
Yes.
if he can get the drilling, all of the sanctions raised, he will make a fortune
Right.
through Exxon.
Well, you know,
Is
we're
that what
talking
we
about,
have a government
but
for
wait a
in
minute.
order to make Paul Manafort
We're
rich?
talking
Or
about
Tillerson. Or
Tillerson? No, I don't
we're
think
talking
so.
about Tillerson, we're talking about Manafort. What we're not talking about are all the businesses who are aligned with Republican interests, who make drills, who
All the
produce
equipment
pipe,
you're talking
all
about.
of the equipment that's going to be used,
The
just like
trucks,
that, all the trucks, that Keystone Pipeline, for instance. I happen to know in this state, one of the electors, you know, after the election happened, there was all this movement of we've got to get the electors to not, when the Electoral College meets, that they will vote against Trump. And guess what? Here's what became abundantly clear. One of the biggest politicians in Pennsylvania is, what does her company do? They produce pipeline. So of course, she's a contributor to the Republican Party. She was not going to vote against her interests. So I'm just talking about, when you talk about Tillerson and Manafort, we also need to talk about all of these other businesses, all of these contributors to the Republican Party who stand to benefit from these
Every
policies.
Republican in office knows exactly what's going on, the
Yes.
same thing that we know.
Yes.
How many of them have spoken up?
No, they're not going to speak up. And
that's because every single one of them is up to here in filth. Every single one of them is bringing in hand over fist money at our expense.
and for any Republican,
Well, I think
anyone
it's a
who's-
good investment to prevent all a bunch of socialistic, communistic, liberal
Okay.
bullshit to come on. So, yeah, I think it's a good investment.
and you know something, with that, the fact that it was a good investment, the fact that you've been honest to say that you don't care and your folk do not care what happens to the citizenry of this country. If we've done nothing else,
The citizens don't care, so why should we care?
If we here, Conversations Across Time, have done nothing else, we have exposed the stain of treason. And that's why we're here. I hope you will come back next week, because I want to know if Vladimir Putin feels that he got a good deal. That'll be interesting to me.
Well,
So
you have to talk to Donnie about that. I mean,
Well,
I
no,
don't
but we're-
deal with Putin.
But we're going to discuss it.
Well,
We're going to discuss it next week. But I thank the audience for being with us. This has been Conversations Across Time. As we say, we're not trying to tell you what to think. We're just trying to make sure you are thinking. And we hope that you will join us next week to continue this conversation. The stain of treason, the smell of treason, the stain of treason. Please tune in next week. I am Vivian Corcoran on behalf of my co-hosts, Babette Joseph, Mr. Roy Cohn, and Mr. Charles Chaplin, and Mr. Robeson, who's here in spirit, unable to be here. We thank you very much for joining us, and tune in next week.
Conversations across time. Conversations across time.